Good afternoon and welcome to Trowel Talk Live. My name is Nancy McDonald. I'll be the moderator today. And just a reminder to put any of your questions in the chat. And Barbara Long, who's the buddy today, will get to those when we get to the question period. I'm very happy to introduce Caroline Kroller, who is our speaker for today. And Carolyn has been with us for just really less than a year. She said that she joined Master Gardeners to find expert advice, but I think Carolyn is going to bring a lot of expertise to us, especially as we hear her talk today on small-scale naturalization and restoration. So over to you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Nancy, Kelly, and Barbara for being here to help me today. So my name is Caroline, and I'm going to talk to you today about small-scale naturalization and restoration. So let's start right away with what is naturalization. Naturalization is an ecologically based landscape management approach that aims to restore the environmental integrity of degraded sites while enhancing biodiversity and ecological resilience. And what does it all mean is that basically we want to bring back the landscape to what the original ecosystem should be like pre-European settlement. So before the Europeans started to settle and change a bit of the landscape. The goal is also to focus on bringing back working natural cycles that are going to be able to sustain themselves even if there's disturbances in the environment. And so naturalization is not necessarily meant to be a little perfect, tiny, pretty, tidy garden. It's really to bring back more of a natural state. And sometimes you can, if you have a small yard, you can integrate a little piece of that yard or decide to, manage this little area of your yard to be natural. And in that case, you would contribute to your local ecosystem. So there's many benefits to naturalizing, and some of the benefits are influencing your community as well. They're good for your community. Some of the benefits for your community are to reduce pollution, regulate stormwater flow. It increases property value as well. It can create socialization opportunities, improve water quality. The plants help filter water, so it improves the water quality for your neighborhood. It helps cool the climate, and it can reduce healthcare costs. It can create employment opportunities, and green spaces are also known to reduce crime. There's also benefits for you if you decide to have an area on your site that's naturalized. It's going to help you reduce the need for maintenance. So let's say you have a lot of lawn like me. If you reduce this lawn area, then you would have less mowing, and in that case, it would be less costly eventually because you wouldn't need so much gas to mow the lawn. It also helps people connect back to nature, and it improves physical and mental well-being. Helps save energy. In my case, I have a lot of sunlight on my house on the south side. And if I would plant trees, then it would reduce the AC bill in the summer, just because the trees would create shade on the house. It also helps reduce the need for irrigation and the reliance on pesticides. There's also benefits for wildlife and the environment because naturalizing creates habitat and food sources, and it increases biodiversity. It also contributes to natural cycles and builds a trophic energy pyramid. So this is a bit complex. The trophic energy pyramid is basically the lower level is the producers, which are the plants and the trees. And then you have the consumers, the primary, secondary, and tertiary consumers. And the primary consumers feed on the producers. Secondary feed on the primary consumers, and tertiary consumers feed on primary and secondary consumers. So if, let's say, you notice that your site doesn't have all these levels of the trophic energy pyramid, you may want to decide to work towards bringing back these these levels on your site. Also, naturalization helps with decomposition, and decomposition helps also to nourish the soil. So if you want to enrich your soil, it's good to have organic matter accumulating. It also helps with creating wildlife corridors. So it helps give a circulation path for wildlife as well. There's 9 steps to creating a naturalization plan. And today I cannot talk to you about all the 9 steps. So I'm going to focus on step 1, 3, 4, and 6. But I wanted to go quickly, have a little overview of the 9 steps. So the first step, and is the most important one really, is to find out about your environmental history. So you want to really have a good base and understand your ecosystem where you're living to really bring back and work towards that ecosystem. Then the step 2 is to consider your site versus your region, because where you live, there might be things around your neighborhood that influences the ecosystem, like agriculture, residential developments, and brownfields. And if you notice these, you can help balance out by working on your own property. The step 3 is to identify the signs of landscape degradation. So we'll see these steps eventually. I'm going to show them to you. Step 4 is to set achievable goals and create an objective plan. And then to create a landscape inventory, analyze your site, engage your community. In that case, it's nice to be able to explain to your neighbors why you're doing this and what the benefits are to them, even because it's going to benefit your neighborhood and your city and your region. So if your neighbors understand your project, they'll be more open to even perhaps helping you or be influenced by your project. Step 8 is to implement your project and monitor it. It's important to monitor your project because you want to make sure that it's successful. And by creating a monitoring plan, you'll be able to track if your plants are healthy, if they're planted at the right place, and if they're thriving. And if you created a green infrastructure or a rain garden or something like that, you can really, like if it's a rain garden, you can measure if the water is actually infiltrating properly. And if it's not, then you can correct it. And that brings us to step 9, which is to review and improve the project. So at that point, you want to review objectively what you did and decide if things should be changed or improved, and then perhaps you can focus on new goals afterwards. So to talk about step 1, this is basically the map of Ontario, and Ottawa and Kemptville, where I live in Kemptville, but it's the same eco-district as Ottawa. So that area is called Ecoregion 6E. And you can Google this online and also later on, you'll be provided with a handout in the chat where you'll be able to find these references in the handout. I included them in the handout. And so you can go and read about your ecoregion and eco-district as well, because in this information, you'll find that they talk about the climate, what type of ecosystem that your region is in, and they'll explain what type of soil and even what type of vegetation and wildlife that should visit your area. So it's important to go and learn about your ecoregion before you start the project. So here, ecoregion 6E represents 6.4% of Ontario. It's the second most populated region in Ontario after the Toronto region. And the forest cover versus the area represents 30%. Then I wanted to give you a little overview of the land cover of the Lake Simcoe ecoregion. So it's 40% croplands, 12.8% abandoned fields, about 30% of forest, which is some of deciduous, coniferous, and mixed forest, and 4% water. And if you go and find out about the eco district, you really have, you'll get a lot more details, and you'll understand better where, and you'll be able to compare your site versus what the normal ecosystem should be. And in that case, you'll be able to pinpoint what should be changed on your site. So here are, this is step 3. And these are the signs of landscape degradation. So if you look at your site and you can see that the soil is compacted, eroded, if there's reduced fertility or acidification, or if the hydrological cycle and water flow is disrupted, these are signs of degradation. There's also wildlife habitat loss or fragmentation. Here we're talking about wildlife corridors. So sometimes you'll have green spaces in a neighborhood and you're part of a place where there's no trees at all, then you're probably in a fragmented area where you could improve by adding trees and shrubs to connect back that wildlife corridor. There's also loss of vegetation cover. This also often happens with residential areas when they do land conversion and they remove everything. They build a house and you have a lawn and a single tree. This is usually a good sign of loss of vegetation cover. So the trophic energy pyramid disturbance, I already explained what the trophic energy pyramid was. So if you find that there's lacking levels, you might want to work towards that. Lack of photosynthesis opportunities. So this is related to plants and trees. If you feel like there's not enough plants, you might want to reassess and plant more. Introduction of invasive species. Let's say in on my property, I have a lot of common buckthorns and purple loosestrife, which I'm working towards removing. In that case, it's important to remove these species to replace them with native species. And naturalization is a lot about planting native species because you want to bring back that ecosystem pre-European settlement. So these are the plants that used to be there before we came in, basically, or I don't know, like it depends who you are, but my ancestors anyways. So lack of decomposition. So if you find that there's not a lot of organic matter accumulating, often it happens with lawns that are monoculture. You might want to work towards adding a bit more on your site. Step 4 is this is an example of main goals and objectives. In this case, when you start working, so you defined your sign. You found out what signs of degradation you had on your site, and now you want to work towards making it better. So you create main goals, which are more general, like restore and improve water infiltration, improve biodiversity, or connect wildlife corridors. And then for each one of them, you're going to create objectives that you can measure and work towards too. And you want to do something realistic that you can afford as well. You know, it's all different for everybody. So we work towards what we can do. And in this case, I gave an example like create a rain garden to infiltrate water, or use permeable materials to help infiltrate stormwater. And that would work towards the main goal of improving water infiltration. Sorry. So for improving biodiversity, I gave the example of planting no more than 10% of one species of trees and planting a native pollinator garden to feed and attract wildlife. In that case, it would attract more diverse insects and birds and so on. I'm going to go to the next slide right away. So here, the master gardeners, Judith Cox, share a picture of a rain garden that she created to infiltrate water. And she said that it was really, really successful. So this is an example. She had a main goal and she created it. This is a good way to work towards naturalizing your landscape. Here, Juliane created a pollinator garden to support wildlife. And I'm sure that you can imagine that it's visited by a lot of insects and birds. And here, Rebecca, she planted native plants. And these native plants, they help attract wildlife, and they feed ants as well, because the seeds of the bloodroot, the ants go and eat that little piece of fat on the seed. So, sorry, it just switched really fast. So it brings us to the last subject that I wanted to talk about is the step 6, to analyze your site. So before that, normally you would do a landscape inventory. And in that landscape inventory, you would map everything. You would map your vegetation, how the water is running, the microclimates on your site. You want to map if your vegetation, what kind of condition it is in. Is it a hazard? Is it healthy? Is it native? Is it invasive? And you put everything down, and then you can analyze what you have and how you can improve your site towards that ecosystem that you've been researching. So here, I'm going to show you what I did for my own property. So basically, this is my site analysis for my home. And I identified my microclimates. So in the yellow spots that you see, these are the dry and hot areas. And then I created some blue areas where it's wetter and more humid and colder. And I have a waterlogged area on the side, on the right side, where there's actually mallard ducks that come every year to reproduce. So for me, that was a desirable wildlife habitat, and I want to protect that habitat. So it's important to identify everything that should be protected. And I had a lot of native species as well in that little woodland area. So all these native species I identified, and I'm protecting them to be able to conserve that area before I do any changes. And so the steps really is to protect, remove the invasive species, you build your infrastructures, and then you plant the new plants, native plants. And here on my map, you can see that there's many opportunities. In the front yard, it's very hot and dry. And if I was to plant some trees here, it would create shade and help reduce energy bills in the summer. And it would also help reduce the need for irrigation. But I also could use all the water that's running off my roof. I could create a rain garden in the front yard with perhaps pollinator plants to attract wildlife and insects and so on. And irrigate that garden with the roof water. So that's another opportunity that you can see. Another one would be where my shed is. Again, I could use the shed roof to water my potager garden on the left of it. And then there's also where I have my septic field. It's a quite large area and it's very dry. But it's normal for a septic field to be dry because you want the septic to evaporate. So it's very tricky here. So the solution would be to remove the lawn and plant native sedges or very short native flowers, or like herbaceous. In that case, it wouldn't affect the septic, and it would improve the vegetation cover, native vegetation cover. And it would create food sources for wildlife as well, and perhaps habitat too. So this is another opportunity to improve towards naturalizing the landscape. And in my woodland area, I have a lot of invasive species. I think I talked about this before. I have buckthorns and loosestrife. And in that case, if I remove those, I create a space and I can plant more native plants and trees to improve again towards biodiversity. And if I use that rule of 10, no more than 10%, then it would really work towards the building a biodiverse ecosystem. So once again, this is another solution that you can find for your own site. If I look at, well, our property is a lot of lawn, so it's very typical. And I'm working towards slowly removing areas of lawn and replacing it with like Carex pennsylvanica, or which is, I won't say it, Pennsylvania sedge, I think, Pennsylvania sedge. So by doing that, I would reduce the need to mow, and it would also reduce the need for irrigation as well. So it's a good solution for the environment, but also for us, because it's a large area to take care of. So it's something that you can consider for naturalizing. And this is it for today. If you have any question, it's time for a question. Thank you for your attention.
So hi, everyone. So Barbara here. So thanks, Caroline, for that presentation. A lot of detail, that a new concept for many of us, me included. There aren't any questions right now, but I had one of my own here. I just wanted to ask you, that first step that you say is so important is the environmental history of the location. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to that, because many of us wouldn't know where to start, and that's, some tips on that would help. Thank you.
Yes, so basically in my case, what I like to do is Google eco-district and eco-region, and you'll find that the Ontario website has a very extensive section on that subject. And you can download the files and you'll find your own district. And in there, it's all laid out. It's going to tell you about the history of the ecosystem that used to be, the soil structure, what kind of vegetation that should grow. I believe in my area, it's a beech, maple, and a birch woodland type of ecosystem that you would find for like trees and such. It used to be woodland in my area anyways. So it's really going to tell you everything. It's even going to talk about, what type of wildlife that should visit. And then you'll be able to see, okay, am I getting that wildlife on my site? And if not, what can I do to attract this wildlife? And you can search about the wildlife and research what they eat, about their habitat, what do they need? And you can start implementing. And if you have a small yard, then perhaps you might not want to start, attracting big wildlife or mammals, but you could create a smaller area just for insects and birds, So that's it. That's how you look for your region history. Sometimes you can even ask for older people that used to live there for a longer time. They might know about your site history and what used to be, and they'll know, in my case, perhaps Farmer John used to farm here and planted trees and so on. So if you ask around to, you might get some people knowing about the neighborhood and the history of where you live. So it's
thanks for that. We have one comment here from Karen, who's saying that she's included milkweed in her garden. And as an artist, she's now identified native species in my cyanotypes. And I have to say, I don't know what a cyanotype is. So do you know? And if not, maybe we can ask Karen to
I don't know either.
And the other thought I had too was sometimes it's good to have a case study. And I know you talked a little bit about your own property, but can you think of anywhere we could find case studies on individual homeowners who have gone ahead with this kind of naturalization using these steps that you've so clearly outlined for us?
Well, I'm certainly working on my own case study at home, but I for University of Guelph, when I took the course of naturalization, I had to research case studies, and there was one in the Toronto conservation area. And they created, it wasn't on a home property, but they created a rain garden to show homeowners that it's easy to, and not costly to create a rain garden. And this is actually one type of infrastructure that you can create to help towards naturalization. And so that was a case study that I studied. And it was really successful, and they monitored it after as well. So we had the data of how successful it was, and it was infiltrating really well the water, and the plants were thriving. But they did have to switch the plants around, because at first they had planted some plants thinking that they were going to be okay, but they forgot to, assess the light requirements. And then they had to move some plants because it was too sunny or too shady, and they readjusted the rain garden, and it worked better. So one lesson was to make sure that when you plant, that you plant at the right area, you know, and so that was, I can't remember the name of the conservation area for some reason, it's slipping my mind, but yeah, it was in Toronto. That's the one I studied for my own project. But yes, so case studies, I mean, I'm sure, you know, if you want to find more about naturalizing, you can look on Google. Like for me, it's really like a library, you know, when I search on Google and I'll look for naturalizing case studies or examples, and you'll be able to find some. But there was also one in Chicago, I believe, that was interesting. It was a home, a house that was also environment friendly, I guess. And they created all native gardens everywhere, and everything was reused, the water from the roof and compost, and, you know, like it was really efficient in that sense. It was very ecologically based, you know, like it was friendly for that. So in the handout I gave you, there's a few references, and there's also all kinds of examples of main goals and objectives that you can work towards. I couldn't show you all the goals today, but it's going to be a good start. If you want to look through it, you'll be able to see some examples of goals that you can work towards and objectives that you can link to. And it's really helpful to do the objectives because you can measure your progress towards that main goal. So for me anyways, I like to see the results for each step, because sometimes the project, the goal itself could seem so general and big that if you just, you know, create some smaller objectives, then you're able to track your progress. And
that speaks to a question that Nancy has asked Carolyn, and that is, what step are you at now in your project? And that, I think, we our last question.
I did all the analysis, and I'm actually implementing right now. So that's why I don't have much to show you for my own project, because we're working on many things and we have 1 acre. And there's many things going on at once, and it wasn't quite ready to start showing you here, but maybe next year I'll make another talk and be able to show you pictures of the before and after. Because right now I have some cardinal flowers flowering now. I have some native sunflowers, and I have you know, what was it? I planted dogwoods, pagoda dogwoods, and I have river birch, but they're all babies, you know, so it's hard to show you now because it's looking so young. And so I wanted to wait a little bit and perhaps bring back something a little bit more.
Well, thanks very much, Caroline.
Thank you.
Carolyn, can you advance to your next slide?
Oh yes, the handout, yes.
The handouts. So the link will be there, and yes, and I know I downloaded it. So thank you so much, Carolyn. You're very young, you're very ambitious, you've got lots to teach us about naturalizing, and we're really looking forward to hearing how all your steps go and the objectives you meet. So thank you so much. And please join us next Wednesday. It's going to be Hydrangeas 101 with Jose Pazador. And don't we get a lot of questions about hydrangeas? So hopefully you will join us then. Thank you.